I'm seeing new builds sitting on the market so long they're not even new builds anymore. Row after row of townhouses, nobody buying, sitting empty for months, and headlines screaming oversupply. But are there really too many new houses in New Zealand? I went looking to find out, and to do that, first I'm going to show you the case for an oversupply of houses, and honestly, it's pretty convincing. Then I'm going to show you where that case actually falls apart and the weaknesses, because that way we can finally know what's actually happening, because it's not what the headlines are telling you. First, let's be honest about what's happening, because there is a lot of stock on the market. That's not made up. Auckland has the most property listings since 2012, more than 11,000 properties sitting on the market. Nationally, there are over 35,000 homes listed for sale. That's close to the highest since 2015. And part of that is because we are seeing more houses being built, and we're seeing dwelling consents starting to pick up over the last 6 months. And where people are getting worried is not just the number of properties being built, but the type. If I wound back the clock to around 2010, almost 90% of all new dwelling consents were houses. Townhouses and apartments, they made up just a tiny fraction. Today, we're building almost just as many townhouses as houses. And in Christchurch, a quarter of all homes are now townhouses. So it's easy to see why some people think there is a truckload of new built townhouses on the market, and Business Desk just released a story showing that some new builds are sitting unsold for so long that they lose their new build status entirely because no one's buying them. And that really matters because new builds get special treatment. You can buy them at a lower deposit and potentially borrow more money from the bank. But if they sit there for over 6 months, that new build status, it disappears along with all of that special treatment. And if you live in Auckland, Christchurch, or any of our country's bigger cities, you probably drive past a development of townhouses all the time, and it does seem like they're popping up everywhere. So I do think it's fair to ask, well, who's even buying these? And surely if I see them everywhere, we're building too many. And while that argument feels pretty convincing, there are some things you need to keep in mind, because here's where it falls apart. Sir Bob Jones, the famous Kiwi property investor, used to say that there was no such thing as an oversupply of property. And that's because of this very simple economics lesson. When the price of something is very, very high, not many people buy it. When the price is very low, more people can afford it, so more people buy it. That's your demand curve, it's downward sloping. And you can see how much people are willing to buy at each price. But the flip side is true too. When prices are low, not many people want to sell their house. When the price is really high, lots of people want to sell to get that really good price. That's your supply curve. It's upward sloping with more people entering the market as prices rise. Now, where they meet, that is the equilibrium. That's the price where the market clears. Now, here's what happens in a property downturn. Demand typically drops, fewer buyers are willing to purchase at the old prices, so sellers need to accept a lower price to sell their house. But what if sellers don't want to accept that lower price? They either exit the market or the house sits there unsold. That's where you get oversupply, but it's not really oversupply the way you typically think about it. It's oversupply at that price. Now, the solution isn't necessarily to build fewer homes. The solution is for house prices to fall and for sellers to accept what buyers are willing to pay. So what Sir Bob Jones was saying in Jones on Property when he wrote that book back in the 1960s is that there's no oversupply. The price will fall to the point where more buyers enter the market and more sellers exit the market, and the price falls and the market clears. But it doesn't necessarily work that simply in practice, and I want to give you a real example. I looked at a property when I was writing my book Wealth Plan about 4 years ago. That property is still online. It still hasn't sold today. Now, the developer could sell that new build townhouse tomorrow if the developer dropped the price enough. It's just that they won't accept the market price. Now, when people see that listing, they then think, see, it's been on the market for 4 years, too many townhouses, oversupply. But that's not what's happening. The problem isn't that there are too many homes being built. The problem is that some developers don't want to or can't accept the lower price. Maybe they paid too much for the land. Maybe their build costs blew out. Maybe they're just holding on, hoping that the market returns. But whatever the reason, that property sitting on the market isn't proof of oversupply. It's proof that some developers are very, very unrealistic about today's market and would rather not sell than take what buyers are willing to pay. There are buyers, just not at that price. And that's a very different problem than the one people often think we have. And one of the comments I can already hear people typing is that if we really do have more property listings than we've had in, say, a decade, surely that's down to all these new builds that I'm seeing pop up. Well, you can actually check this for yourself. If you go on realestate.co.nz, you can see there are over 45,000 properties listed for sale. How many of those are new builds? Only about 6,000. So if you took every single new build off the market tomorrow, there'd still be 39,000 listings, and that just puts us roughly back where we were in 2022. So it's not that new builds are flooding the market and that's why we have all of these listings. It's mum and dad listing the family home, investors selling up because they're ready to retire, retirees downsizing, people who bought at the peak and need to move on. The high inventory isn't just a new build story. It's a whole of market story. But the headlines say too many townhouses because that's the easy narrative, but it's actually not the main story. And if you're finding this useful, do me a quick favor and hit the like button, because that's how I know which videos to make more of. And honestly, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribing, that helps too. You guys have already helped us build the largest property investing community in New Zealand, and we're on our way to 50,000 subscribers. So if that's the case for why there is and isn't an oversupply of new builds, let's look at what's actually happening. Now, let me ask you this. Why are so many of the new builds today townhouses? Well, it's because developers are building them. Well, why are developers building them? Because people are buying them. The fact that there are townhouses being built might not mean that there's an oversupply. It might mean that there's a market for them. If I took you back to 2010, standalone houses made up roughly 90% of all new dwelling consents. Townhouses and apartments, everything else, roughly 10%. Now, back in 2009, 2010, did anyone say there's an oversupply of houses? They're making up 90% of the properties we're building. That's too many. No, of course not, because houses were the default. Fast forward to today, and we are seeing the default house that people are willing and wanting to live in is changing. And that's for three reasons. First of all, families are getting smaller. The average Kiwi woman is expected to have just 1.5 children in her lifetime. And with divorce becoming more common over the last 4 to 5 decades, nearly 1 in 4 households are now just a single person, one person living alone. Now, does a single person need a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom house on a 600 square metre section? No, not necessarily. The second reason is that prices have changed the equation. You know, the median sale price for a house in Auckland is just over $1.1 million. The median price for a townhouse or a unit is $810,000. Townhouses and units are $300,000 cheaper than houses, and when buyers look at those prices, some people change what they buy. Some people say, I'll buy the newer townhouse that's a little bit smaller and lower maintenance than the older house with more land, because $300,000 is a lot of money. And I can't afford the deposit or the mortgage for the house, but you know what I can afford? I can afford the townhouse. And I've only got one kid, that sort of property is going to suit me. And the third reason is that we need to put people somewhere. Auckland went from about 1 million people to 1.7, 1.8 million people in just the last 30 years. The city can't sprawl forever, and so you end up building denser housing. People aren't being forced into townhouses, right? No one's forced to live in a townhouse, but they are choosing them. What one economist, Stuart Donovan, calls the compact quality movement. Less space, but better, newer space. Now, I really want to be fair though, because there is a real issue here. It's just not oversupply. Some specific properties are sitting unsold. For instance, Bailey's found that 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom townhouses don't sell as quickly as 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhouses. But here's the thing, that doesn't mean that 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom townhouses is a bad type of property. It just means that it might not be priced right, or it might not be in the right location, or have other things going for it, like a car park, good outdoor space, or being a quality build. A 2-bed, 1-bathroom townhouse at a great school zone with a garage, that sells. A 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom property with no parking, no outdoor space, priced at the same as a 2-bedroom, 2-bath down the road with a car park, well, that 2-bed, 1-bath property is just going to sit there. It's actually not about the configuration. It's about the value equation. It's the value proposition of the property and the price you put on it. Some developers try building smaller, lower quality properties, but pricing it like it's something better. And that's a property pricing issue, not an oversupply issue. It's a product market fit problem, not a too many townhouses problem. So what do you do with all of this? Well, I think it's actually okay to worry about an oversupply, but I think what you're seeing is the market adjusting. It's cyclical. And if you're buying, buy the right product, buy the right property in the right location at the right price, because those properties are still selling, those properties are still renting. And if you want help figuring out what kind of property to invest in, something that actually matches what people want to buy or rent, my team can help. If you book a free session with one of our financial advisors at opuspartners.co.nz, you just click the big orange button and you can choose your advisor and choose the time that suits you. I'll also drop a link down in the description. So that's my take. The Kiwi dream isn't dying, it's just changing shape. So here's my question for you. Do you think New Zealand has an oversupply of new builds? Comment the word crisis if you think we've genuinely built too many homes, or comment the word cycle if you think this is just the market adjusting, and we'll see where the community lands. And look, if you're thinking about your own property journey, make sure you watch this video next where I show you how to use one house to buy 5 more. Click the video on screen and I'll see you there.